So, this won't take long, but there have been some changes in the underlying law and in our policy that we're going to talk about. So we'll do the first slide here. Just this is sort of the intro, the background, why we're here, and all of that. So we're going to go through the highlights. This is not everything in the policy. We're not going to try and cover everything. There's going to be plenty of time at any point, starting right now, that you can ask us questions. Hopefully you don't have any yet. Okay. But hopefully you have all been received one of these handouts. What this handout is, if you look on the second page, I've only given you the 12 pages of the actual policy. There are also a bunch of exhibits, or appendices, because we're very legal that way. So people want or need to look at them. We might have some copy of these, but I didn't think everyone wanted like a copy of the criminal code. But if you want to read it, it's great. And it has changed. So, and there are some forms that we'll talk about. So again, that's not part of the handout I've given you, but those are available to anyone who wants or needs them. So we're here to talk about and to remind ourselves about what our policy is. The way this came about is, someone noticed that not in every instance we're not following what our own policy says, and that's a problem for us. Better to not have a policy than to have a policy and not follow it. So one of the things that I would like us to start thinking about is, it's been a long time since anyone other than me, as I know, kind of went through our policy line by line and thought, does this make sense for us, Walnut Creek Church of Christ? Bullet point number 2.
Okay, we're also going to talk about, I don't know where I got this topic, but we're going to talk about what is child sexual abuse. And we're just also going to talk about that isn't the only form of abuse, obviously, but we're going to talk about how can we as a church protect the children that are here, both our own children and any children that are visiting. So in order to do that, we need to have an understanding of what we're protecting them from. And so we'll go into a little bit of detail about that.
And so what Walnut Creek has done is, again, it's been several years back. We went through, and we thought about what should a policy look like. We adopted it. It's been updated a couple of times, most recently this month. And we've also instituted a program where we do criminal background checks for those adults, not minors, but the adults who work with children. Several people have volunteered and served the role of custodian of records. Because anytime you get a criminal background check on you, it has, whether you have a criminal background or not, it has personal private information. So we always have one person and only one person who looks at those. And in general, that's a thankless task. So Sharon used to do it, Marcia used to do it. Are you all willing to thank the person who does it right now?
Yeah.
Brad, will you stand up? Yay, Brad! So, again, if you have not gone through this process, part of what you have to do is you have to get fingerprinted and run a criminal background check. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. It's just, as we go through this, you'll see that you cannot serve in certain roles. You can't, like, for instance, help Chris on certain things or in certain ways without going through that process. So, Brad is the one who looks at it, and, it's clear. And you as an individual have a right to look at it as well. But other than Brad, no one else looks at it. We have that. All right, let's actually get going on the next slide. So again, it's not a really fun topic to talk about, right? It's about child abuse. No one wants to be here this afternoon. Hey, what is it? Why is it here? But it's important to us. And we always want to bring it back to our spiritual obligation. We, as Christians, have an obligation to protect the children that we interact with to the extent we can, right? There's some things we cannot do, there's some things we cannot impact. But to the extent that we can, we have an obligation. It's not just sexual abuse, as Lynn will talk about, there's other things as well. But it's not just protecting the children. The reason we do this, and the reason you're in the room, is also because we want to protect you. We want to help educate or let you know what the policies are in place that it doesn't absolutely prevent, but it minimizes the chances that you will be put in a bad situation where there could be allegations of some sort of abuse or misconduct, even if there is none. Because even if there is none, and it ultimately is found out that there was no problem, if you're accused of child abuse, that hurts, right? That's an impact no matter what. So trying to protect you as well, not just our children. Trying to protect families. Even if there's, again, a false allegation, if there's an allegation of child abuse within our family here, that's going to create tension. That's going to create bad feelings amongst families here. And we can work past it, and in Christ we can, but we prefer not to have to. So we're trying to protect families and the congregation unity and peace. We try not to focus on financial aspects, but if there's an allegation of sexual misconduct here along with Christ, that can be expensive, it can be divisive, it can just distract us from what we need to be doing. So we're trying to avoid all of those things. So that's kind of the spiritual focus, and we got the legal focus and obligation, financial costs, litigation, media coverage. Those are the kind of things we don't want publicity about. So the goal of this policy is to help prevent this before it happens. And if it does happen, or if it's alleged to happen, the policy also addresses how we're going to try and work through that. Not cover it up, not minimize it, but work through that in the best way possible. One more slide, and then up to Linda. Churches. Why are churches in general? Not just one of the church Christ, but why are churches in general around the world? So we have this community of trust. We are. Like, if you walk in that door on a Sunday, I'm going to assume that you're a good-hearted person. You're at least working your way towards Christianity if you're not a Christian, right? That is our bias. We like to believe that people who attend here are good-hearted, and they are Christians, right? They're not going to harm our children. Well, that's good. We should not lose that, but that does also make us more remote. If someone really wants to be a predator, they will find trusting communities. We're a community of grace. A lot of people, this is less true now, but a lot of churches used to say, no, it's in the hands of God, right? God will protect our children. And that's the end of the story. We don't need a policy because it's in God's hands. It is in God's hands, but we are the body of Christ. His hands are our hands are his hands, whichever it is. So we do want to make communities of grace. We're forgiving, right? Someone has a history with these kinds of things, God's grace covers that. But there are certain things that we then need to do moving forward to deal with that as well. Ignorance, lack of safeguards, easy access to victims, number of opportunities, volunteer intensive programs. Chris, as he organizes events in particular, but others as well, they organize events involving children, you gotta get volunteers. It's just a fact. And so sometimes we can get a little looking for the lowest common denominator. Any warm body will do, right? We gotta have people to sit in front to some degree. That can work, but we need, as we'll talk through this, something more than just a warm body. And the transient nature of churches also can contribute to this. Next slide.
Okay, the fun part. Okay. So talking about that this is their intention, and there are people that this is their intention. There are people, both people in our church body, and I'm not saying our church body, but just in church bodies that have this, that do these kind of things. There are also people like Dan said that are transiting or come because they are predators and they're looking for just the kind of environment that Dan just described. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of intentional practices of somebody who is looking to perpetuate child abuse. It's called grooming. And so basically, it's a process. They come in and start to prepare, start interacting with children, start gaining their trust, and it talks about some of the different activities. It's usually somebody that is known to the child. It's not usually somebody foreign. It's usually somebody that has some kind of relationship. And those relationships are often built through doing activities with kids, spending time with them, playing with them. And what better way than a church that has all these great activities for kids? And so that's why we're being so cautious, and that's why I'm talking about this, is because this does exist and it is real, and there are people that do it. So basically, you can kind of read most of it for yourself, but they do look for access. They do look for kids that are needy or maybe don't have as much supervision. We do have some kids here that their families aren't here. There's not somebody to supervise. Perhaps they need rides to and from church. And it's a bunch of adults that they interact with that perhaps their family members don't even know. And so that's a perfect opportunity. This is like the hard part, shut up. But some of this too, it's just, sometimes what they will do is there are opportunities for things like pushing boundaries, like it says, accidental nudity. If you're caring for a child in nursery or in children's worship, they've got a diaper situation going on, somebody needs to go to the bathroom, somebody makes a mess on their clothes, and they look for opportunities like that. And so we're gonna talk about how can you protect yourself and protect your children in those kind of situations so that this stuff isn't happening. And if somebody does have this intent, the opportunities for them to take advantage of that are very limited. Okay. So basically, I think we can go forward.
So let me give you an example of in our lives, how this actually happened. Linda and I used to attend a church in Hawaii, and there was a gentleman who started attending, amazingly talented guy. We'll call him Robo. He was a great musician, kind of playing thing. He was a ventriloquist, he could do impersonations, and he was awesome with puppets, not like just your basic king, but puppets kind of thing. And so he started going to church with us and started a children's ministry. Well, it's great. He's getting the kids there in droves, right? My wife has an antenna for things, and she's like, there's something out with this guy. I'm like, no, he's great. He's funny, he's fun. The kids love it, right? We ended up moving away from there, and we heard from friends later. He was, in fact, a convicted child molester. He was on the run from a warrant from the mainland. That's why he went to Hawaii. And he ended up bilking for the widows a lot of money. He was that kind of guy. Because at the time, it was just, that's what we did. Someone came, they volunteered, you're in. We're trying to avoid that kind of situation. And so that situation in particular would have been avoided under this policy. The way it was found, what was in his past. And again, we can be a community of grace and forgive him for what he did in the past and not give him the opportunity to do it again. So that's the kind of thing that we are trying to avoid. Next slide.
Okay, so these are just some common behaviors. Gift giving, kid magnet activities, spending time a lot with one child by themselves, which if you follow policy, that won't happen. Being touchy, inappropriate touch, these are all things that we have to have a lot of boundaries around. But it's not okay to do things like you're saying, like pulling shorts down or playing. And don't think of it as just adults too, because we're also talking about some differentials with teenagers and younger children. That's also an area of concern as well. And so just keeping an eye on inappropriate play, and not saying that that's always intentional, but it is inappropriate in this type of setting, that we have to have some boundaries around that. Breaking the rules and justifying or rationalizing it. So an example that I think of is, you know, if you're invite some kids over to your house, like we used to have the youth group come over or something like, or if you just have one kid come over and you're trying to build a relationship with them, which we've done before. We've had kids over for dinner and stuff. Maybe showing an inappropriate movie or different things like that, and it starts to kind of reel kids in because you let them do things that probably their parents don't let them do, and it kind of opens that gateway to inappropriate behavior.
And this won't be the first time we say this, but anytime you look at a list like this, we're not trying to turn people on each other and look at each other with suspicion. Well, that guy has a pool, that's a kid magnet. Oh, my God. And there's different things. We have those things. But just because you give gifts to children doesn't mean you're somehow an abuser or a molester, right? Okay? But we have this policy that says, look at these kind of things, not just with other people, but yourself as well. Again, we'll use the personal example from when Linda and I taught like the 3rd and 4th graders years ago. We had a group of boys in that class, and most of you would know who they are. And Linda was talking, and one wouldn't shut up, like thumped him on the head. You can't thump him on the head. And Linda's like, okay. So, we have the policies. Is there on purpose? And here's a question. Okay, so those of you might not have heard, they gave us permission to thump my head. Our policy says parents cannot give authority for corporal punishment. I can't spank Jeff or thump on the head. So again, these lists, and we'll come up with some other lists. They're usually they're helpful, but just pick one and say, oh, that's a problem. Okay.
And I'm not giving in this information so that you can be on the search for possible predators in our church body and be an investigator or start looking at legal funding. I'm giving it to you because when you work with children, these are the things that you need to be protecting them, and we need to be aware of these kind of things going on, and looking through that lens of how much is too much. Is this bordering on inappropriate? Is this, you know, are these things going on? And some of them are harmless, it just depends on the context, but you need to be aware of them.
You know, Leah said something right now, it's kind of a joke, but our policy, what if it is your kid? Not that I would do it, I'm just saying, you know, what if the teacher dumps his own kid on the head?
Yeah, so in each of these things, if it's your own child, if you are the parent or legal guardian, your discipline is your choice, right? And so even when we talk about overnights, right? Okay, the parent can, if they want, show them with their child, but you know, that's the exception. So your children are different. Any thoughts on that from a licensed clinical social worker perspective?
Just let the kids know that it's your kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that in general, just, you know, obviously, it opens doors for different things, and kids seeing you do that and that being portrayed in different ways than perhaps it was intended or actually done. You know, oh, Rick hit his kid up the side of the head, you know, he flipped him, yeah, okay, but, you know, it can kind of, that can get out of hand.
So wait till you get home.
All right, so the next slide is more back to the legal side. So I'll talk about this. So this word negligence, we sometimes use it casually, whatever it is, but in this particular context, negligence simply means acting unreasonably. Unreasonable. Now, what is that? Well, there's a whole slew of case law, but it's you have to pick a hypothetical reasonable person and say, would they do this or would they not? Right? So we talk about negligence, that's it. And that's why it's a duty to take reasonable care to protect the children who are under our care. What does that mean? Well, we've had to draw some lines. There is no way that we can make them 100% safe and be effective in teaching, training, and to some extent, entertaining our children, right? We want to make it a warm, fun atmosphere. So we're trying to balance that between anything goes to nothing happens, right? So we're going to take reasonable care. And the ways that we can get into trouble here as a congregation, this first bullet point says, you know, negligent selection. What that means is, it's kind of like the Hawaii example I gave. That was, quite frankly, in retrospect, negligent selection. This guy walked in the door, he was entertaining, so great, work with our kids. That's negligent, right? So now, we're not doing that, right? We're going to work with our kids. We do background checks. Chris, right? Any employee, right, has to do a background check. That's just how we roll. So negligent selection, then negligent supervision. For now, let's say we have this policy in place, and we've done background checks, but we still have supervision issues. So we will talk about a two-person rule, but one of the things we have to be reasonable in the way that we supervise. And sometimes this is going to be a judgment call, right? We got 50 kids in church in some event. How many supervisors do you need? I don't know, right? There's no magic number. If you have 50, you need 10 or 5 or 2, you know. Yeah, 50, one-on-one, you know. Right? But in particular, Kristen's professional capacity, but also all of you have to think, okay, what would a reasonable scenario look like with this many kids? And then negligent retention. This is a tough one. It hasn't happened in our congregation, but I'm just saying, I would imagine it's a tough one. If someone is in fact convicted of child abuse, not just child sexual abuse, but child abuse, they cannot be one of our supervisors that Chris can use to count towards screening adult supervisors. They just can't. We say, yeah, but that was in their past. We're community grace. Christ's blood covers that. It does. All those things are true spiritually. But there's an extremely high rate of recidivism, my wife tells me. If you were a child abuser, it's not something you really just get over. So we have, as a community, decided that probably had your past, you were still saved. Christ's blood still covers you, and you cannot work with our children. So we have that potential for negligent retention, and so that's how we address that issue. Next slide is kind of a summary on that. So we're not going to go over that, but please take a look at those, because that's the gist of what we're doing today. Question?
how does it deal with situations that might involve someone who's not working with children, but is in a setting where they can do harm to a child? Or there may be an opportunity, somebody that comes to our church that does not want to be working with the children, but takes advantage of access to a child. There's a case going on in Brentwood. I don't know if you guys have seen that in recent news. It's a 19-year-old that molested someone in the restroom with a 10-year-old in the bathroom at the church. Now, I don't know the details of whether he was working with the youth or just took the opportunity to do it in a, when they were both in the restroom. I don't know. Now they're finding that he had done, I was just looking at it a second ago, he had been found to have been charged with something similar prior in Richmond. So, but the church may not have been able to do a background check on him because maybe he wasn't looking to work with you. So, we don't do background checks for everybody that comes through the door.
Right.
But all those things there's still access. So,
So the way we deal with this through this policy is, you're right, we don't do background checks on everyone. But especially when we get to talking about the details of our bathroom policy, but pervasive throughout the rest of this is, we try and minimize an opportunity for an adult to be alone with a child. It could happen. It could be happening down there right now, right? Someone who might not know the policy or even run around there. But our policy is that in things that we sponsor, things that the Women's Church of Christ is either off our property or we sponsor, we try and make it so that there is enough supervision so that there's never a child alone with an adult. Can't be 100%. That's our goal.
what kind of liability would there be on the church if a 10-year-old goes during worship to the bathroom and then some adult molested in the bathroom?
So then we get back to this negligent issue, right? Is it negligent for us to not have a hall monitor at the bathroom? I don't think so. I don't think that is reasonably required. But the biggest liability is going to be reputational. Because even if it's later found out that, like that 19-year-old, they have no way to do a background check on them. There's nothing they did wrong, but still a problem. They're in the news, right? So we'll continue to try and minimize the opportunities for that to happen. If, in spite of everything that we do, if we're doing things reasonably well and it still happens, then we have insurance to cover it, but it's a reputational problem, not so much a liability problem.
Yeah, I read that Brentwood case myself. I believe that young man was somebody who helped them with their sound equipment. And so he did have nothing to do with children. Took advantage of an opportunity. In my mind, I'm thinking home monitor is the only way to have a chance to suppress that or test that.
Right, so 1, 2.
What about, you said one-on-one, one adult with one child, and I know that's against policy, but like, when we were in Scouts, we have same policies, separate, if a parent gets exception and permission, like Scott Woodwell's got permission to have my son in the car by himself. And I would say personally that extends even if he's here. How does the church feel about those exceptions when permission is given?
We will talk about that, all right? So that's going to come up. Perfect.
So it occurs to me that the definition of an adult is someone who's over 18. There could be situations of abuse between an older child and a younger child. Are we set up to deal with watching out for that also?
Let's go to the next slide. The license-
Everybody wants to jump in. That's a good question, and I think I kind of mentioned that in the beginning, that's a pressing issue, and there's a difference between a 17-year-old and a 16-year-old, and a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old. And there's some different, as to what is needed for protection and what isn't. So yes, we do want to talk about that. And yes, so child abuse, or it says what is child sexual abuse, and mostly we're focusing on that because that's probably the primary issue that we're trying to protect. The chances for physical abuse, are pretty slim, without the caveat of being thumping, I won't name who it is on the back of the head. Usually that's not an emotional abuse as well. Those aren't really primary any verbal, physical, or emotional or sexual abuse of anyone who's under 18 years old, sexual activity with a minor, anytime, any place, any person. And there are some guidelines legally in regards to what that age differential is that qualifies it as abuse. And so I'm not gonna get into like the level of detail with that, but I think when we talk about what our policy is about supervision, and like the bathroom policy and being alone with a child, you know, we're gonna also relate that to the different teenage age when there is, I say at least a 4-year differential, but I think it's always good to be overly cautious, and I'll talk about how we can apply that to that age group, okay? Always a crime doesn't need to involve any touch and contact. Sexual abuse can also be exposing a child to inappropriate things, such as movies, different things like that.
Next slide.
Okay. I mentioned before, child sex abuse are usually known by the victim. These are just commonalities. The same sex or opposite sex, which I don't know about some of you, but, well, in this day and age, I don't know. Male or female, and more often male, that's just statistically true. Any age, doesn't matter. It's not just young. It can be older people too. Sometimes related to the child, that's true. Various social and religious backgrounds may exhibit many different characteristics. And that's in one of the appendixes, and I'm not gonna go through it because really if I read that, I could qualify, like Dan said, for a lot of that stuff. You know, or I drive a panel van and suddenly you look like, you know, a creep or whatever. But it's when you have a majority of those characteristics, just like the behaviors of kids, when you're seeing more than one thing. You're seeing somebody acting in a number of ways that make you kind of go, that doesn't feel right, that this person's always doing this, or they're trying to do this. And so it's a preponderance of things. So when somebody has a lot of that stuff, and you're kind of going, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't seem right. And there's nothing specific that you can say, I know that person is a sexual abuser, but there are some things that come together where you start going, okay, when all those factors are together, the risk is a lot higher.
So again, if any of you do want to look at Appendix I or anything else, we have copies up here of those that has both characteristics of someone who is abused as well as characteristics of people who abuse it. So they're available if you want to look at them.
Okay, so just some symptoms of child sexual abuse, just to be aware of. Again, you're not an investigator. You're not somebody that has to figure this out. It's just good to know if a kid is having some of these issues, there might be something going on, and sometimes that can be child sexual abuse. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but you know, this could also be symptomatic of a lot of different things. You know, kids could be going through trauma in their life, their parents are divorcing, or it could be, you know, somebody in their family, you know, died or something, and they have some of this trauma. But if you see, you know, some of these things in kids, it might be time to kind of, you know, say what's going on here. Okay, so just so you kind of know about some of those.
So remember our spiritual focus. It doesn't matter if, you know, this is sexual abuse. We want to take care of and protect the children that are with us. So when it's not sexual abuse, these kind of things deserve our attention. Next. That's probably me. All right. So we're going to talk about these. This is just sort of the overview. This is what we're going to talk about. Like worker screening and reporting. That will be you, right? Supervision, that will also be you in the different roles, and then responding to allegations of inappropriate. So again, even if they're unfounded, we do work through the process of how to respond. So, the next slide, who can be a volunteer? Well, first of all, anyone can volunteer, right? Crowd control. But when we talk about volunteers, we're talking about people that, I'm going to keep saying Chris, because he organizes most of the youth activities, but anyone that organizes youth activities, Chris has to have a certain number of screened workers, and then you can have any number of other volunteers, as long as there's enough screened workers to kind of supervise, and again, protect the children and the workers. So regular attendance for at least 6 months. That's just something, there's no magic to 6 months. Right? Could be 5, could be 7, but we as a congregation said 6 months. You need to be around us for a while. They really want to participate. we are. So you have to be a part of our community writ large for at least 6 months. It takes you have to apply in writing. There's a form here. You got copies for if you haven't gone through this, and it includes references, right? You have to give references, and those references will be checked either in writing or people will call. So we do this this process. Personal interview, typically, although usually by the time you get here 6 months, that's already occurred, right? When our elders and pastors have already interacted with you, talked to you about your interest and background, that type of thing. But if it hasn't occurred before, then we do that. And for adults, there is a criminal background check. We'll talk about teens separately, because we can have, teens age 13 to 17 who serve as kind of screened workers, but there's never criminal background check on any teen. Our 2-adult rule. This is the foundation of this policy, right? If there's one thing that we want you to focus on, is this 2-adult rule, right? That in any instance where there is a group, or I guess one or more children, that includes anyone under 18, right? We want 2 adults there, right? And preferably not related to each other. That's not written in stone, right? Linda and I taught a class together, right? So that's in theory not ideal, but we want 2 people there. So this last bullet point is really it. Avoid one-on-one anywhere, including cars. There's going to be exceptions to that. We're going to talk about exceptions to that. But again, if there's one thing we want to focus on for your own protection, you shouldn't be one-on-one with a child. That's begging for potential problems. Christine.
With the 2-adult rule, should it be a male and a female? Only because in class, like for Children's Church, for example, and I know they say it shouldn't be related, but Brad and I do it together, because he can't sing. I would think it would be a good idea to have a male and a female, because you have little girls and little boys, and little girls sometimes need to go to the restroom, and they may need assistance. And I think to have, for our protection, even though I do not believe any man in this room would ever do anything, but it just because we do have visitors a lot of times, and things happen in people's lives, and things go on, so it makes more sense to me to have a male and a female be there, so that the females can help the little girls, and males can help the little boys.
We tend to have different rules for different ages. So we do try male, female, especially for kindergarten and younger. But when kids can go to the bathroom by themselves, we tend to not work at that as hard. But you're right, especially for the youngest children who are more likely to need help. We try to do male, female. All right. So how many of you have gone to like a sensitivity training or diversity training at work, something like that, where they hand out like a red card, a yellow card, and a green card, and then they give a vignette. Say, is that a red card situation? Is that a stop? Anyone done that? All right. So we're not going to do that. There you go. But Lynn's going to start just walking through some vignettes that we're going to talk about. Like this scenario is acceptable. That's the term we use, acceptable. Then on the other end of this, that will be the green light. Then at the other end is not acceptable. That would be the red light. We don't want that to happen. And there's some stuff in the middle that's going to be yellow, and we say it's not preferred. So we try and avoid that, or we have specific circumstances around it. We're going to go through some vignettes after Rick's question.
So what's gonna happen if there is a class with only one teacher in it?
2 things. We're going to have a child protection training course. We're having it. But what we've done for that is, this did not used to be the case, but now you'll notice that every door on our classrooms has class night, right? People can see in the classrooms. And if there is one teacher, that door stays open. So if you are walking by, you can see what's going on.
Okay.
So that's, again, we're trying to avoid that scenario moving forward, but if that happens, that's what we do.
Okay.
Vignette number 1.
Well, I wanted to go to something else first.
Oh.
Okay.
Go for it.
I just wanted to, kind of in regards to what Christelle said, we can try to do what is reasonable, you know, females with females, males with males. But remember going back to the slide where I was talking about who are sexual abusers. And that's not necessarily the formula that's always true.
Right.
You know, it can be male-male, it can be female-female, and so that's not, you know, a level of protection that guarantees us anything. So just thinking about that, that doesn't necessitate safety, or dictate safety, I should say. And the other piece is just as parents and things, you know, be having conversations with your children at an age-appropriate level about the policy here. You know, that you don't go to the bathroom with one person, or whatever, you know, when you learn about the policy to say, you don't go somewhere by yourself, even at church. You know, because kids, they run all over here, they go with anybody. But to have those conversations that this is what we do. You know, you don't go alone with somebody in a room, or whatever the case may be. Just so that your kids are proactive too, just like you teach them out in the world. Yeah, unfortunately, you have to teach them to have those standards here as well. Okay. All right, so let's go to the little people. The screened adult worker is the green, the non-screened is yellow, and minor any age is the blue. Okay, so the basic two-person rule is with with children is to have at least a minimum of 2 adults. And as you can see, it can be one screened worker and one non-screened worker with a group. Okay? Ideally, everybody that works with the children or volunteers with the children will be a screened worker. That would be the ideal. We're just talking about the bare minimum standards, okay? And this is when they're together in a group. You need to have at least 2 adults at all times. And so that means, you know, whatever the activity is, wherever it's located, that there need to be 2 adults in that room. It can't be this one group's down here with them for a couple hours with 1 adult, and this group's down here for hours with 1 adult. We've got to try to find a way to have 2 adults present as much as we possibly can.
So is it better to have 1 screened adult than 2 non-screened adults?
You can't have 2 non-screened adults
Okay.
supervised. So yes,
So, and then on this, just note, there's 10 little kids in this scenario. That's completely arbitrary, right? We're not saying 10 kids equals 2, right? It could be 5 too. So that's something that, again, little smaller kids, 2 to 10 is,
frightening.
that's not enough, right? Yesterday, Linda and I were 4-on-4 with some kids, and we were outmatched. I mean, so, all right, so just as we go through this, there's no magic number to, okay, there's 10 here. There are some instances where the number does matter.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, also acceptable to have 2 unscreened workers and 1 screened worker. So you're getting the theme, there needs to be a screened worker there. Okay? Not acceptable to your question. No matter how many, you can have 10 non-screened workers and we're not gonna have the event. We're not gonna do it if we don't have a screened worker there, we just can't.
And so that's why, please encourage folks that weren't here that you think can work with the kids. For Chris's sake, he's got to go out there and find green people, right? He needs more screen workers. So if people are willing to work with kids, that's great. And they can volunteer as yellow people, but it's easier for him if we get screen folks.
Yeah. Okay, so we need bathroom scenarios. Let's talk about this. And this is tricky. We've taught class with little kids and they always have to go to the bathroom. It just seems like they never can make it through the full 45 minutes. Okay, so do you want to read this?
Sure. So here's the concept. Because most classes, classes during class time, we're not going to have 4 adults, right? 2 screened and 2 non-screened. We're just going to have a screened adult, maybe 2 screened adults, but screened and non. So we're only going to have 2 teachers. So if one kid's got to go to the bathroom, there's going to be 1 person left in the room. So in this one, notice what's happened. So even though only 1 kid had to go to the bathroom, the screened adult is taking 2. Why is that? Well, because then at least there's kind of witnessing, right? It's never one-on-one. Remember, that's the thing I want you to remember. Never be one-on-one with a child, especially in a vulnerable like bathroom scenario. Okay, only one of them has to go to the bathroom, but hey, let's go. It's a party. They'll have fun. And notice now we have an unscreened person in the room, right? But again, an unscreened person is there with multiple kids. So again, there's sort of a safety in numbers. There's other witnesses. So we think this is acceptable. We think this is a reasonable approach. Right?
So we have older kids who teach in 3rd, 4th grade. One of them has to go to the bathroom currently. They leave the door.
Yeah, so this is what we sort of drawn the line as kindergarten and under. We think there should be some supervision when they go to the bathroom. If they're in that, what do we call the room with the bathroom,
Children's church.
children's church room,
Yeah.
that's easy enough, right? They can go there, and they never leave your sight, they're there, right? But older than that, then you as a teacher can decide, okay, maybe someone that's 6 years old, you decide, you know what, they actually do need supervision as well, but you could send them down the hall. So, 5 and under, we need someone to go with them and never feel alone, right? Rich?
So under this scenario, I'm assuming even though the door was closed while 2 adults were in the room, when they leave, the door stays open.
Right, so the question was, might not have heard, that remember, if there's only 1 adult in the room, the door stays open. Okay? Dave, then,
How will the screen person be made aware of the co-teacher and someone who's being screened?
so how does the green person know the other one's yellow? How does the screen know the other one's unscreened? Typically, you won't, but that's not up to you, that's not up to me. Like Chris will tell me, he will know, I'm a screen person, and he pairs me up with someone else. I don't have to know if they're screened or not, because I know that we have it.
How do you know who goes to the bathroom?
Next slide, please. It doesn't matter who goes to the bathroom, right? Again, no one's one-on-one, right? So this is acceptable as well. For the unscreened person, again, we take at least 2 kids, right? So again, just avoid one-on-one at all times, and then it doesn't matter.
They're just taking them to the room, they're not going in there with them.
So, here's the bathroom rules thing, right? You never want to be, even in this scenario, in a stall, closed stall, with another child. What if they need help? Okay, they need help. That's part of your job, right? But don't close the stall, and especially since you've got 2 kids with you now, even then, the other kid, because now we're talking little kids, you can hold the stall door open while you do what you need to do. These are really hard situations that no one likes to deal with, but again, closed doors, closed stalls, one-on-one, it's a problem, so try, parents, try to get your kids to go to the bathroom ahead of time, but B, as a teacher, again, try and avoid one-on-one in a closed area.
So is it an information privacy or data privacy issue of not informing the teachers who's who? Because certainly either may be safe options, but one is a safer option than the other, at least in my perception here. Why can't we communicate who is screened and who is not screened in a classroom situation?
You can certainly ask, right, your co-teacher.
Well, I would actually advise that, when you start a class or a situation with somebody, to find out who's who. Because when you're in the heat of the moment and stuff like that, it's not the time to have the discussion. I think it's good to know who's who, and also just, there's not privacy, because this isn't a person whose screening was rejected and they've got some kind of history or something. It's just a matter of, I think it's important to know, and I would advise that. And then also, like you said, there's a situation that's more ideal than another. We're talking about, what is acceptable, but honestly, use your better judgment. What's the more safe scenario for going to the bathroom? A screened worker as opposed to an unscreened worker. That's a riskier situation. But when you can't do that for whatever reason, this is the way to approach it. There's no ideal. I mean, sometimes, you know how it is when you teach classes, it's not ever perfect. But you have to do the most you can to minimize the risk.
So we have Jim, then Chris, then Rich, and I think, anyone else? Oh, then here. Oh wait, did we ever get to Aaron?
No.
You were next, okay, you were next, then Jim.
What if you're dealing with a kid who's disabled or is injured, like on a wheelchair, and things like that, and do we get their parents, or if they're not available, what do we do? Say, like, if it's, we could potentially harm them physically, and that could be, misconstrued, things like that. How do we deal with those things?
Right, so
And if
general
it's
height
disabled,
sensitivity issues, either, number one, we tend to not, it's not tend to, we don't, for instance, do medication, that's just not our issue. But someone who definitely needs care still falls within this area, that should always be more than one, right? And then, you're gonna have to be in there helping them. So again, you don't want to do that by yourself, you know, try it.
But again, depending on the extensiveness of what the assistance would be, I would think that would be a conversation to have with that parent as well, about how to handle those situations, and it might be going to get that parent, because If you're in the bathroom taking care of Joey and it's this long drawn out process, you're leaving this person in the classroom with a bunch of kids for an extended period of time, which is not ideal either. So I think those are really specific cases, but I would have that conversation with the parents and say, how are we gonna handle this? Let's come up with a way to do this. You know, whether it's they have to check in during class to see if that's needed or whatever it might be. That's kind of how I would handle it.
So I think it was Jim, Chris.
So if we have an unscreened person teaching a class, my assumption is that would be a temporary status for that person. What is our process for starting the ball rolling with them getting screened at the point they choose to teach a class?
So our policy says there is no such thing as a temporary worker who is okay to do everything, right?
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you're doing this temporarily or not, you are not a screened worker. So it's not that, since I only do this occasionally, I can count as a screened worker, I just don't have to do anything. So we don't make anyone become a screened worker. If you're gonna teach a class, you can do that as long as you go with a screened worker. Right? There's a non-screened person, let's say I'm not screened, I can teach a class, but I cannot count towards Chris's required screening and
Well,
not.
shouldn't our goal be to encourage?
Absolutely.
So what do we do at the point where when you have someone who's gonna teach who's unscreened, do we have a process to say, we would like you to become screened? Or do we just say, do we just not bring it up?
Oh, we do bring it, but Chris should feel welcome to bring that up. You're right to bring that up. Again, like, that was sort of my thing, that if you know people out there who are working with our kids, who should work with our kids, get them to be screened, encourage them to be screened. Don't twist their arms, because again, there might be reasons they don't want to be fingerprinted. They don't have to be fingerprinted. But then they can become screened, okay? So, or it doesn't have to be that, right? They might just not want to go through the process. They have nothing to hide. They just want to do it. So that's fine. But encourage people, again, to help us out, be screened. So then, Chris, Rich, and then I think. Wait, no, Chris and Rich, then. Rich, Bob.
You wait your turn, Bob.
Okay.
One of the things they could ask, as far as how do we know the person that we're working with is screened or unscreened? My plan from here on out, now that we're doing this process and kind of like almost a reboot, is to have a list of individuals that I can tell you, like you asked me, tell you just outright, but also I'm going to try and intend towards nobody does anything with the kids unless they've been through the screening process. Now the difference is, if there's someone that has been here for 6 months but hasn't been able to do the process, and they want to co-teach with Blake, or they want to co-teach with Miranda or Colette, that they can do that, but we're going to start immediately the process. And we're recording today with the intention of being able to share with people who want to get screened quickly, and we'll just kind of go, at that point, we can do it on a case-by-case basis with the exception of the updates to the rules. And everyone will have to go through updates to the rules from here on out, so.
Okay, thank you. Quickly, I'm gonna get the key for the thermostats. Are people warm in here?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine.
It's that time of year, you don't know whether to have it set on heat or cool or whatever, but I'll switch it and get the cool going. Anyway, in this scenario, that yellow person, the unscreened person, has still been here 6 months.
Right.
Because that trumps everything, right?
Right. To be a accountability worker, we want you to be part of our community first. So.
Thank you. My turn?
Yes.
I think maybe we need to consider some kind of rule, that if anybody who is unscreened and helped with the children more than once, we should ask that person, or tell that person, we need to screen you. And because I've had one person over the years come to me and say, I don't really want to be screened. There's some things on my record that I don't need anybody to know about. Well, I'm sorry, but you can't be involved with children unless you're screened. So I think we're getting to an area of negligence if we don't think of, at least consider that.
Yeah, so people who are temporary, like they help once or twice a year, I think we're gonna allow that to happen, but yeah, if they're here or regularly volunteering, then yeah, you can move towards that, so.
the record, I've got a clean record. However, what criminal background stuff that's exposed will eliminate somebody from being a screen worker? I mean, if they have like white collar, like bouncing checks or a drug possession back in their youth.
Turning your helm to page 4. If you want to, you can look at,
Because, you know, if somebody bouncing checks back when they're 21 years old, they don't, my question is, they don't want that to be general knowledge.
Well, keep in mind too, that when you have a criminal screening, that is not made general knowledge, that's made the knowledge
But
of,
still,
it's only looked at by Brad.
But
So
my
when you say
question-
that, be careful, because not everybody knows what the
my
results are.
question is, if they don't want to be a background check, if they don't want that, they're fearful of that, does that automatically eliminate them from being able to watch our children? I mean, that's what's being proposed here, though.
It does, because we don't know, I mean, I know if it was you saying that, you know, we trust different people, but again, we're getting back to that community trust issue. We don't know what people's records really are, just because they're telling us it's only bounce checks or whatever, we don't know that, so we have to do that.
It couldn't be an unscreened volunteer either.
at some point, I think we would move towards that, like,
Yeah.
if you wanna help out once, a couple times a year, I think that's gonna be fine. I think Chris is gonna have to have that latitude to put people in the room, but at some point, just say, okay, now I wanna teach a class, I'm gonna be with these kids for 3 solid months. Yeah, you need to be screened. So wait, Kimberly,
Back to the bathroom scenario. So let's say there's only 3 kids in the class, because a lot of our classes, there's not a lot of kids. So there's 3 kids in the class, so I'm assuming we just take out 3 to the bathroom. But let's say we
wait for
have,
it. Next slide, please.
but the other question too is, let's say we have 2 boys and a girl in the class, and the teacher, might be me, might be Aaron, what bathroom are we going to? With 3 kids of mixed genders.
So first of all,
Or 2.
this doesn't work as well, but let's say there is 3, right? In this instance, now you see what it's not preferred, this is the yellow light situation. We don't think this is a great scenario, but if you've got 3 kids, then yeah, you leave 2 in the classroom with the door open, and then the screening worker takes the 1. But again, you're not installed, the door's not closed, so that's the way we do it. Because yeah, sometimes we will have 3 kids in a class. It's just gonna happen. And if they're mixed sex, then we don't want them all draping in the same bathroom. Although, you know, if they're 3 or 4, then we probably doesn't have, but, you know, so this kind of scenario is, again, it's not ideal. And then flip to the next slide. This is not okay, right? Now we're on the not acceptable. This is the red flag, right? If you're gonna have one-on-one, again, don't close stall, you're not in there with the door closed, but it's never the unscreened person. So now, oh wait, yeah, go on, what's next?
Okay, kind of the same thing, but let's talk nursery. Since I don't know who's screening and not screening with regards to diaper change. So do they have to only be screened to change the diaper?
We do, we are gonna come up to the diaper policy.
Diapers.
So that's a good question. I'm gonna say, I think anybody that wants to work with the children that, you know, I think we need to encourage them pretty strongly, whether it's once or twice a year, whatever it is, that they become screened. And, you know, I know there are people who refuse to and they can, and I guess, you know, that's once a year or something, but I wanna encourage everybody to, because there's no reason not to be. I think I'd rather err on the side of safety than not. And so that will always be encouraged, but whether somebody can come once a year to supervise, you know, jam or something, and they're in a room with a, you know, a huge group of people, yeah, they can do that. Would I encourage them to go ahead and be screened so that this isn't a question every time they wanna volunteer? Absolutely. But they won't, it isn't an automatic, no, you can't do that at all, ever. But yeah, we definitely want people to proactively and encourage them to do that.
Okay, so we have Kathy, then Aaron. Oh, wait. Brad, then Kathy, then Aaron.
So, the congregation, I tell you, the not preferable category, we were strongly encouraged, in fact, it kind of became policy, when you're in the gray area, communicate to the parents what happened. There was a lot of logic behind it. It made it obvious, it made it apparent. If situation that's not preferable, one of those uncomfortable ones, I always make sure I talk to the parent about it afterwards. That way, you're exposing the action to the light. You're letting the parent know what's going on.
For example, he had to take, if he has to take a little girl to the bathroom, because I can't do it. Like say if we're in children's church and the bathroom is right there, you know?
Yep.
I'm there, but he can, you know, kind of direct a little bit better.
Right.
He would commit, not that this has happened, but he would communicate to the parent. You know, she had to go to the restroom and I, you know, helped her. I just wanna let you know.
Wouldn't go in the
Or
room,
something like
but I
that.
might
Yeah,
close the door for her.
no, I was
Just being
thinking.
different.
Yeah, so kinda like that situation, cause we have, ours is a little bit more unique. So it's,
Right, so wait, we had Kathy.
Oh, it's just a response to that.
Okay. All right, Barbara.
I was just gonna say that you can just leave the door open in that
Yeah.
case, we do that all the time,
Yeah.
like within feet of.
yeah, just
So
in
you
case.
can hear, you're.
I can hear everything.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Mine was, I've been screening like a long time ago, is it possible here, I remember, do you get fingerprinted here at church, or do you have to go find a live scan location, like when I get fingerprinted for schools, like that?
You go find the live scan and we can help with that.
Go do that.
we have a list of places.
Right. And if it's a financial issue for people, we will help with that as well. But we got that big, ugly, yeah.
Are there any sort of guidelines that determine the time you evaluate that 6-month period? That's what I'm asking. Somebody comes in January 1, don't see him for a month. They pop in mid-February, don't see him for 3 months. They come back, getting a, you know, you're getting summer, and then they're there 4 weeks in a row. It's like, hey, I think I would like to, I started back in January. Are there some written guidelines on how that 6 months is determined?
So, no. What we do is refer that to our senior pastor. Our policy just says, be in regular attendance for 6 months. And become a member. So to be a screen adult, you also have to be a member of the Wallaby Church of Christ. We don't require that, again, unscreened, right? But again, if you're gonna be continually involved, we're gonna move it in that direction. And if you wanna become a member, okay, but then we're gonna limit your interaction with our children. That's just the way it is, right? Wait, Aaron, did you have something I?
You answered my question about,
Okay, Richard.
Is regular 50%?
Yes. It's certainly within that.
I think it's a discretional, so.
It just says regular,
It's regular,
like, regular is like once a month, you could argue that, but we would not, I mean, again, that would be something that we would have to talk about, Chris, Jim, Bob, Dave, you know, that's who. So we're gonna have one more slide, then we're just gonna cover the last bathroom scenario, then we're gonna move to the next tricky scenarios.
Oh, yeah, depending on the age of the minor, like we said, if, you know, we're kind of ballparking 5, you know, kindergarten age and under to be supervised in the bathroom, being an adult goes with them. We're looking at, you know, it is an okay scenario for you're teaching 3rd grade. You know, those kids can go use the restroom on their own. I wouldn't send them, you know, I was kept it like, kind of, you know, looking out the door and telling them I need to see what they're doing, because you don't want to, then they went off or something, you know, so you have to use your, you know, your best judgment. But
Right.
that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, same thing, in 3rd grade, you could also use your judgment and say, look, you can wait, you're old enough, you can wait, right? But again, it's a judgment thing, okay? And if they can't wait.
What about as parents?
About-
How they're treated, their child.
Oh, you
And
can
they
always-
ask about themselves, that is.
You can always ask for parental advice.
Is the buddy system not preferred, where you send two girls, 2 boys? And that's what they do at the girls'
Right,
school.
so I don't see a downside to that, other than, you know, playground.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
2 same-aged girls or 2 same-aged boys, you can send them, but.
But there could be another adult in the bathroom and have a single child kids there, right? I mean,
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that could happen. Yeah, somebody else could be there in the bathroom, might have something to do.
Yeah.
That could happen.
So
was the scoutmaster, all of our kids were old enough to know how to wipe themselves. But I had 2 kids that were 2 years old that needed it when they were coming to this church. What's the policy officially?
So that's the assistance we're talking about. So again, you would not be alone in there with a closed door. So especially if they're that little, you would be in the little bathroom there. The door's open. They're not gonna be self-conscious about someone else walking by, but then you've got an open door. You're in there alone, but it's not closed. You just don't close it.
I'm not volunteering.
I know. Wait till the parents come.
So Jackson is gonna lead us to the next slide in transportation. Oh, actually, you're right, I'm sorry. So this is point A to point B, because we're gonna talk about 2 different scenarios. What I mean by point A to point B is, hey, everyone leave the church building, then we're gonna ship you over to these skating rinks, the bowling alley, wherever we can do that, all right? It's you're all going in one car, from one place, we're all getting out of the car at the other place, okay? Next set of scenarios we're gonna talk about is, I'll get in the car, I'm gonna drop you off at your house, drop you off, okay? So those are why, so this is point A to point B. And we picked 7 because, a lot of people have 7 passenger vehicles. So ideally is, no matter how many kids are in the car, you have at least 1 screen adult, and at least, and then, so you have 2 adults, at least one of them is screened, is what I'm trying to say. So it's similar to the other classroom, right? You could have, as long as there's 1 screen, you could have 2 unscreened, if you got room in the car. But you need 1 screened adult, and you need 2 adults, right?
So where's the permission exception come into place? Because I could see a scenario where Adrian Marshall would have Stephen Whitwell and Kyle Will Smith in the car just by themselves.
We're gonna get there.
Right.
Yep, we are. So this is just the preferred, like this is the ideal scenario right here. You fill the car up, you got 2 people. So that's the green light situation. Let's move to the first yellow light.
Okay, so this one, not preferred, meaning to have 1 adult, even though that's a screened adult, be transporting, again, this is point A to point B, so me taking, a group of kids over to the bowling alley by myself, even though I'm a screened worker. Not ideal, it can be done, it's point A to point B, but not ideal. You always wanna focus on no one-on-one and having a second adult there, screened or not screened. But this can be done, because, you're not gonna be alone with a child, but it's not ideal.
Right. And then that's where we get to the permission. What if there's 1 screened adult, Rick, and there are 2 kids in the car? One of them has to be your child, and one has to be Adrian. Okay, if they give permission, even if it's only 1 person, they give permission, you can do that. We would say it's not preferred, right? And that's still, it's the yellow light situation for you. Not the kid, we're not worried about it. The kid.
And also, I don't want the church to go into liability just because they've gotten permission off church,
Right. So, we prefer that we stick with these guidelines, but if you get specific permission from parents, that's their child, they get to give that permission. Next scenario. So now we've gone to the red light, right? Sorry. Go ahead.
So, this is pretty self-explanatory, unscreened worker transporting point A to point B, not acceptable. Can't be by themselves and transport. Have to find at least a screened worker to be there as well.
So this is where, again, Chris would run into problems, right? You have a bunch of kids here, we need to get them to the skating rink. He's gotta find enough green people, so if they're not screened, please be screened so that Chris can find the right number of people, all right? Because this is just not okay, and it doesn't matter how many kids are in the car, it's just 1 non-screen doesn't work. So the next one, that sort of is point A to point B. So now we're talking dropping kids off 1 at a time. You'll note the same first rule, this is the preferred, this is the green light situation, at least 1 screened adult and 2 adults in the car. They can both be screened, but at least 1 has to be screened. All right, so then we move to the next scenario.
I'm actually gonna mention this because as an example. So I don't know if we still have that El Puente program here, the after school, if we don't have that. Well, we used to have it, I volunteered for that one time, and I didn't know, it meant taking kids home afterwards. And so we only had enough cars, we didn't have enough adults for 2 adults to be in the car with me. And I ended up taking these kids that I didn't know to, 1 at a time, dropping them off. And as we're getting down, I didn't know if they went to the same houses or anything about it until we were already in the car. And I got in a situation of we're down to, okay, there's 2 kids, the last one, one gets out and it's just me and little Joey. And so I was in a pinch, I didn't know that was going to happen, and that's obviously a very risky situation for myself. And we were a child predator, obviously, for that child as well. So in the spur of the moment, what I did is have that child call his parent on the phone and stay on the phone with somebody in the car until we got to the point where I dropped that child off and give them the name of who was driving, what was happening, and they stayed on the phone because I just felt really uncomfortable in the sense of I didn't know who this child, never met their parents before, anything. So that was kind of how we handled it in the moment. That's not an ideal situation by any stretch, but that's kind of how we dealt with it right then.
And to be clear, this is actually one of the reasons that we ended our involvement with Elton. It's over things that were child protection policy issues and liability issues, in the way that they managed, adult volunteers.
Yeah, it puts you in a pretty vulnerable position.
And so that's what we mean by, again, it's not preferred, so this is yellow light switch, it happens. Linda just described one special process and notice. What we like to have happen is, if this is gonna be the scenario, you call the parent of the child or legal guardian ahead of time and say, hey, I bring a bunch of kids home, guess what? Your child's gonna be last. I expect to be there about this time, this is gonna drop out. So ideally that happens ahead of time, but we're working on the fly, so we can do that as well. So that happens here.
Question, these apply to church organized activities?
Anything that we sponsor, right?
So if we have a carpool that goes to a function thrown by, say, Antioch, and the back here it says insurance liability, and we gathered in the church parking lot, if something happened, will the church be liable, or?
So, again, that's gonna be reasonable person standards, but in general, if we meet here,
Yeah.
and we are organizing who's driving, yeah, that's our sponsorship, we're on. So the next scenario is, will not surprise you, right? You can't do this, right? You're dropping off, you can't, Chris can't just grab someone, hey, you got a driver's license? Cool, right? So that's not okay, that's the red light scenario. And there's actually 3 scenarios we're talking about. So there's point A to point B, it's dropping off one at a time, and now everyone's favorite, the next slide.
Overnight scenarios, so we're talking about lock-ins, different things, you know, if the youth group goes somewhere and there's a group of kids all sleeping together.
Or not sleeping.
Not sleeping together. If you've ever been here for a lock-in, you know, the kids all sleep, you know, and they usually designate this is where the girls are gonna sleep, this is where the boys are going to sleep. And so in those situations, we need to have the same kind of supervision. There needs to be 2 adults of the same sex in the room with that scenario. Hopefully more, because, you know, when they're teenagers, they need, I think they need more supervision. You know, in the middle of the night when they're running back and forth and all that, but that's the minimum of what's acceptable. So we have to have that in order for those events to happen.
So it's green light, next one is yellow light.
Not preferred, but acceptable, which.
So the reason this is acceptable, there's a screened adult in each, what's called a room. This could be a tent, camping, wherever, but screened adult, and there's more than one child. So let's go to the next one real quick. We'll get to that as well. But anyway, there's more than one child. So again, you have screened adult and, in essence, multiple witnesses. Okay? So that's why, again, it's yellow light, but sometimes it happens. So multiple kids with one screen worker. So then you get to this, this is the red light, right? Why is the red light on? Because you have some kids with an unscreened worker alone. It doesn't matter, you can swap, male, female, whatever, but you can never have overnight, single unscreened worker with kids. Thanks.
Okay. And the same thing, you can see the scenario, the male that puts you in a one-on-one situation overnight, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're straight, one-on-one. We don't
Same
do it.
scenario for females, we want to be equal here.
Yep.
So if there's a lot of them, like the girls are in here sleeping, does someone need 2 people in here watching them sleep?
Well, hopefully you'll be sleeping too. Yes.
Well, because then I figured there's probably some still up running around though, and these
They're
girls just wanted to come
yeah,
back.
yeah,
So
so-
2 people need to be in here though.
Ideally, it needs to be 2 work, it could be 1 screen worker, 1 unscreen, but like I to show that it has to be at least one screen worker needs to be in that room supervising them.
Alright.
That's why we need so many volunteers, because there's so many situations like that.
So that's all the exciting graphics we have, all those, you know, stick figures. And, so what we are wrapping up, we're almost done. So, some things, open door policy, remember, anytime that there is one person in a room, we got a bathroom or a classroom, doors should be open. We have the glass panels, but one-on-one, if they're open, you can't lock the doors. This isn't backing up to the first policy, first point. This isn't going to be applicable to most people, but certainly Dave, Chris, but some of you as well. What we call pastoral counseling. Sometimes kids will come to you and they'll want to talk to you, right? So when you have some particular rules around that, and so if it's a scheduled thing, like say, hey, I want to come talk to you, then you actually should get parental consent. Let them know what's happening, when it's going to happen, where you're going to be. And we still have open door policy, right? It needs to be private and confidential if you aren't overhearing it, but you should avoid one-on-one, closed door, even if this kid says, no, I really want to talk to you, or you're giving spiritual counseling. Let's make sure that you still protect yourself while giving them at least the amount of privacy to make them tough. Unlocked doors, should be as a given, but you can't lock yourself in with kids. Then we've got team workers. So we've got a couple that are here today. Thank you both for coming. So again, if you're going to count as one of the green people, right, screen, if you're between these ages, you've got to come, you've got to do this. You can help at other events if you don't come and do this, but again, Chris can't count you as part of the screen workers. So full screening except the criminal background check, overnights, it's trickier, and Chris has to work through that. For instance, 16-year-old can't kind of be counted as one of the screening adults for 15-year-olds. Right? That's their peers, right? So it's a couple of kids. Height sensitivity to aggregate number. So again, this is one of Chris's dilemmas that he faces each time he gets volunteers. We've got to have enough, including team screen workers, to satisfy not just the policy, but our safety concerns.
I just want to emphasize again that all these scenarios that we're talking about, even with team workers, like they still apply to them, are they screened or not screened for all of those situations. And so just keeping that in mind, that just because they're kids doesn't necessitate that it's okay for a 16-year-old to be taking a 4-year-old to the bathroom by themselves. That's still not okay. Just because they're teenagers, they're younger, we're using the word adult a lot, but the policy still applies when there's that age differential. And to be very cautious about that. Like Jim brought up, that incident. And so I think we need to be thinking about that too. When we have, teens volunteer, which they do so generously to help with the younger kids, that's wonderful, but the same policies still have to apply, which makes it even trickier for them in regards to supervision. But we need to adhere to that for safety.
Yep. All right, next slide. So check in, check out. This is one of the things that really made me think that we need to go over our policy again. I'd like some interested people to sit down and think this through, because all our policy now, it used to say kindergarten and under, there will be a definite check in, check out process, right? You have to drop it off, sign in, get a tag, do all that kind of stuff, and it was detailed in our policy. What we say now, because for a variety of reasons, we say screen workers must use a check-in, check-out procedure for all kindergarten-age children and younger. That's how we say it. Quite frankly, I don't know if we do that. We can talk about that, but what we should think about is does this work for us? Is this reasonable protection? And if so, make sure it's done, right? Because again, from a legal perspective, it's better to not have the policy than to have a written policy and not do it, right? So I think this is great. I think we should do check in, check out. And I think kindergarten even below is the right number. But again, interested parents should weigh in on this. Chris is going to weigh in on this. So think about that. But that's the current check in, check out. Procedures for sick children. There's kind of 3 categories that you'll see in the policy when you all read it, I'm sure you will. So first of all, minor things, band-aid type first aid, we do that. Your church, we do that, right? And then third, as you might guess, if someone is seriously injured, what do we do? Well, we file 911. We get them help. We inform the parent exactly what happened, right? But again, you take the child first, 911, and then move forward from there. So it's in more detail in the policy, but I don't think it's anything shocking or what you might think of as unusual. So, administrative medicine I covered, no physical punishment, we covered that even if parents, I put on their request, I mean, you can't do it even they ask me to.
What's our position on administering first aid?
So, yeah, so, if you are qualified to do so, you can do so. But again, the first thing that we do, aside from, you know, a scraped knee and a Band-Aid, you protect the child's safety. So if they're not breathing, again, and there's, to the extent you can, try and figure out why they're not breathing and CPR on that technique. If you're not qualified, you don't know what to do, call 911.
I was gonna mention too, Dan, I know we have, a few nurses in rotation and a paramedic. So a lot of times, I think what would happen is someone would say, go get Melissa, or go get, Scott, or go, instead of calling 911. So we probably shouldn't, the best scenario be call 911 even if you do have medical personnel in your congregation.
That is our policy. All right, so this next slide, we probably covered a lot of, but Linda wanted to talk about it some more.
Okay, so diapers, now I asked about diapers, so again, children 5 and under use the classroom toilets, we talked about that, children over 5 we talked about. Bathroom accidents, yes, clean up and do the safety procedures that we talked about. Make sure the door's open, make sure there are enough adults, so on and so forth.
Why don't we cover what happened to diapers?
So, I'm gonna go into such a second, so in regards to diapers, you need to change diapers only in an open space where it can be viewed by others, so. And that's the diaper changing situations that we have, so that's not a problem, nobody wants to see it, but if you're in there. And that is an open space, and there is another adult in there, another worker with you, so the spaces that we have, so just don't, not closing the door, only having one person in there doing it, so I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Or what I used to do, just wait till the time period was.
Oh, and we probably never say this too often, so the last bullet point, remember, that's just the 2-person rule. Try and do that, okay? Just sometimes we can, we talk about all sorts of exceptions, but let's make that the exception, let's make this the rule. Next slide, and really the last substantive slide, so we're almost done, less than an hour and a half. Time flies. So, let's say that there is an allegation. Now remember, it's just an allegation, okay? Nothing's determined yet. So, A, treat it seriously. So remember, as Linda said, the number one reason kids don't report abuse is everyone's gonna believe them. Okay, well, let's treat it seriously. But understand that it might not be correct. Right? We have to find that balance. And so you want to immediately involve either one of the trustees, Chris or Dave, and the elders, right? Don't go this alone. And we have detailed what those folks will do. Sensitivity to not just the victim, but also to the others who might be involved. So again, kid reports something or you see something, be careful with it. Take it seriously, acknowledging that a lot has to be still discovered. Be sensitive to mandatory reporting requirements. This is something that some of you will already know, but you have to be careful. If a kid comes to you and says, I want to talk to you about something, will you keep it confidential? You have to be careful about saying, yes, I will keep it confidential. 2 categories of people. One category are mandatory reporters, and we think of those as, for instance, let's support social workers, nurses, right? If someone tells them about abuse, child abuse, sexual or otherwise, they can't keep it confidential. Legally, they have to report it. So, we say, okay, that's not me, right? under the criminal code in California, however, even non-licensees who we think of as not mandatory reporters, if you are placed in a situation of authority and a child tells you that, now, under the criminal code, you still kind of become a mandatory reporter. You can't just keep it a secret. You have to at least tell the supervisor. So, just want folks to be aware of that. That absolutely, if a kid comes to you and wants to talk, you should talk to them, but be careful about making promises that you might have to break, right? Absolutely, I'll keep this confidential. Well, actually, no, I won't. So, I just put you in a tough situation, but just be careful with, reporting. Sensitive to the alleged abuser. Remember, Kimberly.
For the mandatory reporting, as volunteers, is everybody a mandatory reporter? Because as a teacher, what I know is that if there's something I suspect, I have to call CPS. I can't tell my supervisor, I can't tell the parent, I can't tell my boss, I have to call CPS directly myself. As volunteers, are we under that same obligation of we must do a direct report to the appropriate authorities?
It is a gray area, right? So for instance, I am not in a category of mandatory reporters, like lawyers are not. But what if I'm teaching this class? Then am I a teacher? If so, then we would say, yeah, teachers aren't mandatory reporters. What if I'm just sort of doing crowd control at a youth event? Yeah. That argues more than, I don't have to report. So, it's a gray area. I don't want us to get too caught in the gray areas because what is our goal? Our goal is to protect our kids, right? So, whether or not I'm a mandatory reporter, or might I might not be, we have to think about what's going to be protective of our children. So that can help us decide. But yeah, there's this area where I don't know, I'm a volunteer, but I'm also a teacher, so we get into that. Be sensitive to the alleged abuser. Again, it's an allegation. Take the child seriously, but I am harmed the moment someone says Dan Brown was accused of child abuse. That just hurts me, right? So we got to be careful about how we approach that. So.
Well, on that note too, that if this situation does occur for you, please keep in mind confidentiality and keeping that within the sphere of where that needs to stay. If a child tells you something, that's not something to then communicate to other people other than is necessary. Because we don't know what the situation is, and like Dan said, that could be life destroying, to do that, that's not the best way to handle it. Even though that could be shocking and overwhelming and you want to talk to somebody about it, make sure that's an appropriate person and for the right reasons, because that can, you know how those things work, and you don't want that to happen to anybody. And that child probably doesn't want, if that is, something that is true, they probably don't want that information out as well.
And that list doesn't include parents? Do you include parents if the child reports abuse?
Oh, so if there's a report of child abuse, our policy says first, we report generally, but we also do let the families know. And we are, in fact, guided by the policy more specifies somewhat their desires. Again, sometimes it's mandatory, we have to move it up the chain, but if the parents or beyond that want to keep it more contained, it is parental decision, but we have to comply with the law and then work with the parents.
What if it's the parents doing the abusing?
I was about to say, for camps that I've done in the past, the rule is if you know that a parent has been involved in abuse, you can't report to either parent, the accused parent or the other parent, because there's the possibility of kind of
obfuscate.
Yeah, the facts that there can be conspiratorial type stuff going on. I don't know if that's the same case for us or not, but in the event that it's a parent that's accused, that's something I've heard.
Yeah, and keeping in mind too that if you make a report, you can do that anonymously. You don't have to identify yourself to make a child abuse report. So you know that, I don't want that to hold anybody back. And it can be very touchy. These are people we go to church with, different things. So you can do it that way. They will ask you for the information, but you don't have to give it. That kind of thing. And my understanding too, in my profession, is we don't have to notify parents if they make a child abuse report. You're saying the policy said we should, but legally.
Right, okay. And similar vein, remember, we need to report the trustee, elder pastor, or ministry leader. not the one if they're alleged to be video, right? That should be fairly obvious, but if, I'm a trustee, but if some kid alleges that I abuse them, you don't report it to me, okay? You report it to another trustee on the road, okay? So, we got that. And then, just summing up, you know, this is bottom, that, again, don't go alone. Let's take it seriously, but involve the right people. We're gonna keep it small, right? Announcement. Let's get folks involved to do the investigation. In the packet of stuff, the appendices, the reporting form, if anyone ever wanted it, and you can get it from us. Because it is, there's a link to it that you click. The reporting form pops up, and we tell you how to submit it and all that kind of stuff. Again, it can be done anonymously. Aaron.
I have a quick question about the refresher part. So when we refresh, how often do we do it?
We have bounced around on that. We used to do it every year.
Yep.
And we haven't done it in probably 5 years now. So we're going to be more often every 5 years. I don't think we're going to go back in once a year, but we'll also kind of see how the video turned out and if it's useful for people, if they can watch it without us having to do it on, maybe we can do that as a refresher. But certainly,
Other groups, it was once every 2 years that we had to get it required by law.
so every other year, so it's not for us a legal requirement, but you know, we have to, again, we have to be a reasonable organization, so maybe every other year is reasonable, and we'll try and get that going. Late,
It doesn't sound like it's written anywhere, but is there guidance on how often we rescreen those that we screen?
No, it is not. So all, by signing on to this, becoming a screen worker, you agree that we can check your background, run your criminal background check again periodically, or as often as deemed appropriate. So to my knowledge, we haven't had a situation where that we've done that, but I agree to be involved here, and that's part of what we can do.
Well, I don't know if this applies or not, but at work, if we screen somebody, if there's a subsequent arrest or criminal activity, then the organization that has screened them gets notification. So you don't have to keep it. I don't know how long that period of time extends for, but that does happen.
And I'm not familiar enough with, I mean, we do pay to have the screening done, and I don't know how long they do that for. So, Aaron?
They've kind of asked the question for me already, but I guess the follow-up, or maybe a suggestion would be, in one of the lines in the slides, it said one of our requirements for signing up is to have an interview. I think maybe a good recommendation is to have an interview for the refresher, because you might not have a criminal record, but it's good for, say, like the elders or whatever, to ask simple questions like, so how is everything, you know, like, how is everything really? And maybe to get a bearing of where things are and things like that, whether you're, to ask the candidate whether they're mentally ready or you know, stuff like that, just to share, yeah.
I have no objection to signing Jim Bob.
Yeah,
They would love to.
And second thing is about the screening. I think it might be good marketing if we let people know that if they can't afford it. I mean, we've talked about it, but we don't really say it up front. If you can't afford it, we'll pay for it, because it is, everyone knows it's expensive. We go through it in our school too, you know, when we volunteer. No one knows, everyone's like, I'm not gonna screen, but until someone says, oh, it's subsidized, oh, then everyone comes up forward, you know, so it's a good marketing problem.
It's tax deductible.
And it is, be frank, I mean, it's kind of painful. You know, go find someone, get fingerprinted, you gotta fill out the form, including references. So it's not like it's dumb. So I appreciate everyone who has done that. And
I want to make my usual comment regarding safety. Thinking of an emergency during church or an emergency during classes, think fire or think sizable earthquake or whatever. How do we handle it so that parents and children are reunited without being locked in that hallway? And how do we provide for our people who use walkers or wheelchairs? I think we need some understanding of how to handle an emergency of those natures.
address that, but not today. We can address that, but not today. This is child protection training, and I don't know that we have a policy. If we do, maybe we should. So duly noted, yes, that we should think about this.
Yeah, it's been brought up before.
Yeah.
And nothing's happened that I know of.
Yeah.
We have a paramedic in our church. We have several who are nurses. And I think some who have a little expertise in this area could develop some guidelines.
That would be great. You want to round up some volunteers to do that? We would welcome that. Jenny?
I do know, Jim and Bob can correct me on this, is that we do know that a couple of people have contacted like Nancy, you know, and so a few people know when it happens, what to do for her. But Lord, Lon, he knows people that go to him and say, you know, this and that. So, there is something out there.
So there's informal connections, but yeah, maybe we can do something more formal.
I think about the children program, probably what would be important for this class would be, is if we were teaching at the time, what she's saying, don't run out the hallway and listen here, everybody use the exits out, and is there one central place where we all meet, where parents can come pick up their kids, so that kids aren't out of our hands to keep track of who was in the class, who ran one way, who ran the other, how to work together as a team, either two people to get your group and stay in one place with parents, that you're accountable for.
Yeah, maybe we could just devise marshalling areas on both sides of the building.
That's required fire exit.
On the back
The
door.
state, in our building, every house has to have a fire exit.
Bob?
On behalf of Jim and myself, I just want to say thank you to Dan